Where in the world is Eric?
He is at a Warhammer tournament that he's been talking about, like pretty much nonstop. He's trying to bring back this like golden hammer or something like that, some battle axe or something.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lights Out by Making Chips. Today with me is Nick, the one and only Goellner, and of course, I'm also your host, David Vuyk. Nick, you've been out globe-trotting around the world, gallivanting like the manufacturing hero that you are. I know you were at the emo. How is emo?
The emo. So I just learned it's not a concert for emo music.
No,
which is crazy. And I do have a confession to make. I'm not the one and only Goellner, believe it or not. There's like 18 of us who all work at the company. And some Mertzes.
Is there any other Nick Goellners there, though?
No. And I have 4 kids, but I'm not one of those people who does the junior thing.
No, okay.
I'm not like, George Foreman?
Yeah.
They're
Sure.
like all George. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my son has my name as his middle name, but that's as close as we got. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I did the same thing. I did my middle name as one of my son's middle names. That's about as, whatever the word is, vain as I get with the naming.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, dude, emo was awesome. It's like, if you describe it to somebody, it's like IMTS, but like maybe 40% more exhibitors or different brands there. I think you could say, like, we have a few competitors on the Hennig side at IMTS, but at emo, there's Turkish companies, Taiwanese companies, they're all over the place. So yeah, and there's more builders. Like, you feel like when you walk through IMTS, you see all these machine tool builders, and then you go to emo and you're like, wow, there's even more than I've ever seen before. So it's crazy.
That's crazy. Yeah, you're just seeing like so many more vendors from those parts of the world that don't necessarily show up to like East Tech, West Tech, IMTS, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And so then, what do I go to emo for? I want to see customers. We're global business. We serve other global businesses. And then I want to do some research on kind of the markets that we're in, the sectors that we're in. And I found out, Dave, that we have about 75 more machine monitoring competitors than
Oh, man.
So.
We're screwed.
It's over.
No,
you and I talk a lot about monitoring, and it's a kind of a nice to have.
We already had a sense that was the case, but that's okay. What we typically find is, some have features that we don't have, and we have some features that they don't have. But it's not just about the technology; it's about how you apply it. And of course, we're gonna get into that later on. But any big takeaways from emo that you came home with that really changed?
Quality of that segue that you just laid out there was
that
top-notch hosting. Like, because that is what we're talking about today, dude. Like, you could capture data all day, but what do you do with it?
Exactly.
As part of this kind of mindset shift, what is a lights out legend? How does the mindset change when you're just a person who wants to implement automation and get extra hours to a true lights out legend? And we're going to complete our series. I don't know if we named it like we did the automation trap. We had a whole story with the automation trap, but this will be the last of our mindset shifts series.
I was going to say the key mindset shifts for Lights Out, I think, is something along the lines of what we've been talking about. But Nick, it's just occurred to me, the room's kind of empty. It's just you and me. Yeah. Where in the world is Eric?
Eric Nekic. Well, I think he would be okay with me admitting where he is, but Eric is the most unapologetic nerd I've ever met in my life. He's obsessed with Dungeons & Dragons and another game where you paint little figurines and then play with them on a board called Warhammer. And he is at a Warhammer tournament that he's been talking about, like, pretty much nonstop. And he's like, the game itself is really hard. There's people who get paid to play.
Oh, man.
Like, dude, people get paid to play this? He's like, by like video, like table game stores. I'm like, man, I'm sure they're raking in the big bucks.
So when he comes back, should we refer to him as like Lord Warhammer or something like that?
Well,
would that be
if he
okay?
comes back, he's trying to bring back this like golden hammer or something like that, some battle axe or something. It's like a trophy. Okay. And if he brings this trophy back, that means he either won the game, which he was not optimistic about, or he won the art competition where you paint your whole board or whatever. And so that's the one I think he's got a real shot at. There's some betting markets out there in the sports books, and I do have a bet on Eric Nekich to win the painting competition at the Warhammer tournament in Lake Geneva.
Well, I hope he's wielding that battle axe for the entire recording of the next episode, because I think
he's
that'd
my
be
favorite.
awesome.
I love people that are into weird stuff and just like, hey, this is what I'm about. This is what I do for fun.
Dude, it's good to have hobbies. 100%.
For sure.
Awesome. Well, cool. Maybe like just to set the table a little bit, right? We've been talking about these mindset shifts that create lights out legends, right? And so what have we covered so far? We talked about having a mixed mindset versus fixed, being automated rather than operated, adaptive rather than aggressive, which we covered last time, alongside predictive versus reactive. And so if you want to catch up on any of those topics, just listen to the previous episodes. But today, what we're going to concentrate on is coached versus monitored. And really the big idea with that is developing a team that is going to leverage data, what you're measuring in your production process, and apply that for creative problem solving. Maybe like a way to frame that would be dashboards don't make chips, right?
Yeah.
Collecting data that doesn't lead to change on the shop floor by taking some kind of action based on that data is not going to help you. In fact, it's waste is really what it is.
I love that. Dashboards don't make chips. That's solid, dude.
Well, and if you're not making chips, as we all know, you're not making money. So, I mean, that's where the logic goes. So that's what we're trying to talk about today. There's definitely some technologies out there that make that a lot easier to kind of collect those insights that you can respond to. You can also measure things manually, but it's more error prone and obviously takes a lot of time. And so, we have these wonderful technologies available today that make that a lot easier. So maybe kind of with that as the intro, Nick, maybe I could start off with a question for you, because I know you talked about this at the Automated Shop conference in Indy. In your view, what's the difference between monitored versus coached in a lights out shop?
When you do podcasting and you're always talking about here's a way to be better, a way to take it to the next step, it almost can come across like our shop always does it the right way, when it's more like the content comes from the other side, where it's like, I know we either weren't doing it the right way or still continue to be in that laggard category. And so it's like, let's talk about, I'm almost preaching to my own company and to my own team, let's talk about how to get to the next level, because I've seen some incredible shops that really do an amazing job with data. And even between our two sister companies, AME and Hennig, some are more advanced than others in different areas. And so the genesis of this is we had machine monitoring installed on some of our horizontals that make tombstones. And every day for 3 years, there would just be this dashboard with a really low level of spindle utilization, and it would just be on the wall. It's okay, cool. We're not doing that great. And no one would ever do anything with it. And I always make the comparison. It's NFL season in the US right now. I don't know if the Canadians are as into it as we are, but everyone's thinking about football right now. And I'm just you get to halftime and the coach is trying to rally the troops and make this really exciting speech. And it's hey, we had 118 yards rushing and we lost 2 turnovers and we completed this percentage of our passes. Let's go get them. Okay, who cares? All you did is read stats. That's not motivating. That doesn't do anything for us. So nobody hires a head monitor for the Chicago Bears. They want a head coach who's going to take everything that he's seeing and apply it and scheme up a better way to make the second half better than the first half. And so if you apply that to your shop and you think about what you're doing in your shop, capturing data, like you said, getting all the sensors installed and pulling data out of the machines and understanding probably things like utilization and maybe advanced metrics like OEE, which we uncovered in the automation trap. Once you're starting to pull some of that out of it, if all you do is slap it up on a screen and no one talks about it, then you've just wasted money.
Yeah.
You maybe got a little bit more insight, but you didn't do anything with it. So,
I think like the word coaching can get some people's feathers up a little bit because I think about like business coaches and life coaches and things like this, which not everyone is like into necessarily, but like maybe a way to say this in different words is like, when we're talking about a monitored shop versus a coached shop, a monitored shop, they might know what their problems are. A coach shop knows the problems, but also fixes them, right? That'd probably be like the biggest difference.
I think the way to really figure out the difference between the two is one is talking about gaps between a desired future state or a target and the current state and like how they're going to close that gap. And the other's just like, oh, great shops are at this and we're at this and it sucks. Like, So just really working towards closing that gap. And then once you've hit that target, raise the bar, create another gap.
And part of that is having an awareness of like where you're starting from, what your baseline is right now. And so that's a bit of a process in and of itself, right? Especially if you don't have some kind of a machine monitoring solution tied in with your MES and ERP. So figure out what that starting point is, but then also like go through the exercise with your team of setting a goal, maybe even a lofty goal for what you want the future state to be. And so where do you think people should start with that?
So I think it comes down a lot to like cadenced meetings. You were talking about your wife as your business partner, and what did you call your morning routine?
Yeah, we had our morning stand up, which is better known as morning coffee. Yeah,
I love that because it's like people who actually have kind of like lean in their DNA. They say things like daily stand up.
Yeah,
it's a everyday meeting. You go through the key metrics. You talk about your gaps. You talk about what you accomplished yesterday, if you hit your target or not, and what you're going to do to improve today. There's a lot of different variants of these daily stand-up meetings, but I think it's important to establish a cadence. And you alluded to it a moment ago. Make sure you set a very clear current state. So we're going through an exercise. It's awesome that we work together now. We're going through an exercise with one of our businesses where we had to constantly say, "Hey, let's not talk about future state. Let's lock in the current state right now. Figure out exactly how it's performing so that we can assess that and then set a target for the future."
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline because it's always like super easy to get like revved up about what you want the future to look like, but you also need to know where you're starting from, which is super important, especially in the context of trying to measure, OEE and kind of how that is improving over time.
And I think from the tech stack side of it too, you need to get a baseline starting point. We talked about doing things manually being kind of a waste of money. In most cases, when we implement technology, we do it first manually, intentionally, because sometimes when you buy a solution, whatever it is, ERP, machine monitoring, MES, like any of these words, when you buy a solution, you have to like kind of learn how that software works. And then you're almost like tailoring your business into the software, which can be risky. It can lead you astray. So a lot of times it's like, hey, let's like with a pencil on a piece of paper, like track manually for a week or whatever, and really lock that in and then figure out how to apply technology to do this and more of that automated versus operated mindset, even with data collection.
I think that's important. Like it's okay to do something that is not scalable and maybe a bit expensive on the labor side to run as an experiment to kind of prove something out, to prove out that maybe like investing in a machine monitoring solution or an ERP solution or whatever, that's going to give you the desired outcome you want. So yeah, I mean, that's a great way to start. But of course, I think something that is really helpful when you're trying to track your OEE is investing in a machine monitoring solution. Ideally, something that integrates well with, if you have it, an ERP / MES system. And it'd be worth talking for a second about kind of the difference between all those, because I think a lot of these software acronyms get like, not confusing, but it's hard to know where one stops and the other begins. So with machine monitoring, of course, we're talking about monitoring the systems of your hardware. So we're looking at things like spindle load. We're looking at even some of the peripherals, right? So maybe we want to know coolant, concentration, coolant level, temperature. We want to talk about, chip bin level. There's all kinds of things we can measure and then use that to make decisions off of.
I would even consider almost everything you said pretty advanced condition monitoring that very few shops are really doing.
Or kind of more like process monitoring, because we're looking at a few different things.
Yeah.
When it comes to ERP, that's more like, what should we make? Where should we make it? When? At what cost? MES is kind of similar, but different, because it's more like, okay, how do we make it on the shop floor right now? So that's like
the manufacturing execution system for this.
So establishing work orders with work instructions, scheduling that, managing quality checks, scrap, rework, all that kind of stuff is kind of what we're talking about with an MES solution. And so machine monitoring is something that can really tie a lot of those together and help with the data entry portion, which when it's manual can feel a little bit tedious. But if you can integrate your machine monitoring solution with your ERP and MES, now you've got this kind of closed system that is still requires some manual data input, but it's a bit more self-informing in terms of machine state. It can, with machine monitoring, you can track cycle times, downtime, and all of that can now feed into the database. So you've got all these important metrics in a way that's useful.
Yeah, you can connect it to job level data too, if you connect it to the ERP instead of just like what's happening on the machine itself, which is because now you can connect it to like the profitability of the job and the history of the job and all the stuff that lives in your ERP. Just so everyone knows, ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, that's probably the most popular of these acronyms, but it's essentially like the brain that connects operations to the finances of your business and does a lot more than that. And we made this joke, Dave, like, what is an MES? Because all the ERP companies can't claim they have MES built into their acronym. And then all the machine monitoring companies are like, yeah, we're a machine monitoring plus MES. So it's kind of like everyone wants to claim this, like bridge between the two. And no one really knows exactly what an MES is.
And not all solutions are created equal. I think like before making this even more confusing for folks, it's like find the one that is most tailored to your process. And that would be an important thing to consider.
And the problem you're actually trying to solve, like figure out what's the problem you're trying to solve and then make a tech stack that's going to solve it.
That's right.
At the most basic level of machine monitoring, you've got like your on stack light on top of your machine. It's green when it's running. It's red when it's not. You Pareto all that and you figure out, okay, how often is it green? Why is it red? That's like the most basic level. Now, when it's not running, why? Those are the downtime issues.
Downtime reasons.
Like, and so then connecting it a step further to the job level and like the overall performance of your business is where you start to really cook with gas.
And why? Because once you know the downtime reasons, once you know what your productivity is, what your performance is, and that's tied to, specific reasons, then you can create the continuous improvements initiatives that solve those reasons and improve your OEE. So that's what we're really talking about is, having the intelligence, the manufacturing intelligence that is going to enable your team to make the improvements to your business process that are needed so that your shop can perform at a world-class level, right? So part of that is having the tech stack in place, having the monitoring and the ERP and the MES working for you and well integrated in a way that everyone can use, but then also empowering your team so that they can then take that data and make good decisions with it that impact the business in a positive way. So hopefully that ties together that whole mess of machine monitoring, which is MMS versus ERP versus MES, which is just a lot of letters.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think the key is what is the KPI that you're trying to track? And like, how does that connect to ultimately the performance of your company? If it's profitable, if it's growing, if it's sustainable, all of that. So I believe that there's like a very strong kind of North Star metric in all of this. And it's another acronym we call OEE, or overall equipment effectiveness. And so let's do some math. You want to lay out like some formulas here? I know you're good at math.
For sure. I mean, I'll do my best.
I'm terrible at math. Okay, so the formula is availability times performance times quality. and that gives you your OEE. So how do you get each of those? How do you measure each of those? So availability is what you planned minus the downtime divided by what you planned. So if you want your shop to run 8 hours a day and your machine ran 6, then there you go. Simple calculation from there. Performance is like your ideal cycle time times the parts that you made divided by your total runtime. So availability times performance times quality. Okay, so let's go through like a real example and we'll break down.
Let's do it.
Like why you should track OEE and how to track OEE in the best possible way. Okay, so if availability is your planned minus your downtime divided your planned, I'll give you an example of that. Out of the planned production times, how often was the machine actually running? Okay, so you have 8 hours and you ran 6.5 hours. You might think, oh, that's really good. That's 81% availability. But this is the Lights Out podcast. So we don't think like that. We know our competitors across the pond or maybe next door in the shop right next to you, they're thinking 24 hours a day because they run with automation and they can run without somebody operating the machine. So I think 6.5 hours of runtime in a 24-hour day is how you should really measure that availability. And that's only 27%. So you got a pretty small fraction there. Now for the next part, performance. So you've got a target cycle time, let's say it's 35 minutes, and you're averaging 42 minutes. That's 83%. So, okay, let's talk about some reasons why it might be 7 minutes slower than it should be, and why you're not exactly getting that target cycle time.
Mm-hmm.
Got any thoughts on like why?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, part changeout might take longer. Maybe you've got some in-process checks that you didn't account for when you set that initial target time. Maybe you're not using any kind of adaptive feed rate controls, which could, bring your cycle time per part down. Little like shout out there to Slytex TOS, which we talked about on the last episode, which is like a really interesting way to try to squeeze out cycle time efficiency, amongst other things like tool performance.
Yeah, I think the last one that's where you hit it, the tool performance. So if you're going to like separate yourself from the machine and you need it to run without any issues, you're going to lean on the side of caution and slowing things down and really babying the time in the cut.
Yeah.
Because you're afraid like, okay, if I break a tool, I'm screwed. And so that's why like the TOS, the product that we sell, would help where you get over that catch-22 of like, I want it to run uninterrupted, because if it's interrupted, it stops. But I also want it to run at peak performance at that target cycle time. So, and
to give like a really practical example of that, it's like sometimes you're running a tough material. Maybe you're running some like 304L stainless. And, batch to batch, there's some variability, and sometimes you get a bad batch material. It's got tough spots in it. That's just super hard on the tools. Maybe that breaks tools kind of mid-cycle, which then causes downtime. That TOS solution is going to recognize the increased spindle load once you hit that tough spot within the material and slow down the feed rate to work through that without destroying the tool. And if it's going through, an easier part of the material where that spindle load is below a set threshold, it might even speed it up a little bit. So again, it's process reliability. It's not always about making the tool move faster. It's about making those adjustments so you have a reliable process and you avoid the downtime caused by maybe like unexpected tool breakage.
Yeah, I think that's the adaptive over accelerated mindset. Right? Like you win a race if you're a Formula One driver, not by accelerating the whole time. It's by winning the race, navigating the track. In the machining form of that, it's navigating the workpiece. Are you going around an outer contour where there's not so much of the cutting tool engaged? Are you going on around an inner radius where you might need to slow it down? Is the material getting hard or soft? It's all like the track that you're racing on. And so a lot of people just have this set speed and feed, and they're not adapting to the course and the track.
It's crazy how all these episodes are kind of overlapping and kind of connecting. I don't know who came up with this podcast series, but they did all right.
Yeah, well, Probably this really smart guy from Canada. Okay, so back to our formula here. So we've got a terrible availability because we're running 6.5 hours a day because we're running a decent amount in only one shift. We're not thinking about the 3 shifts, the 3 8-hour shifts. And then we have an okay performance. We're not really hitting our target cycle time. We're at 83% there because we're coddling the machine. And then out of all the parts produced, what percentage were good versus scrap? That's simple quality. So we've talked about, is your machine running, or do you have long setups, or is there a lot of time where your machine is idle? You're not making chips, you're not making money. And then when you are making chips, are you making them as fast and efficiently and as productively as you thought? And then we're not just here to make chips, we're here to make quality parts. So what's coming off the machine? What percentage is quality? So 100 parts, say 5 of them are scrap, you've got 95% quality. Well, now you got to figure out your OEE. So you have 3 fractions, you multiply them together, you get an even smaller fraction.
I know, that's the worst part, because like at the end of the day, you might nail 80% on availability and performance and quality, but when you got to multiply them all together, your OEE is like 50%.
Yeah.
And what's world class, Nick? What's like the best of the best? What are they hitting in terms of OEE?
Over 70, maybe 75%.
That's crazy.
It's very, very hard to achieve, especially in, like, most of the people listening probably aren't running super high production.
You know, what's the difference between a world-class shop getting 75% OEE, let's say, and the guys that are like less than 50 and just struggling to make improvements?
I'd say I mean, I don't know exactly, but I would probably say the amount of time that they've been doing lean and that they've been measuring and that they've been continuously improving on the numbers. You know, nobody's like born into 75% OEE when they start their shop. It's a journey. And so, like, the example we just came up with, 27% times 83% times 95% is a 21% OEE. It's
brittle.
Yeah. And terrible is normal.
That's the reality for a ton of shops. I mean, one thing that kind of strikes me with your point on the availability of like being able to run 24 hours a day, which really kind of impacts that availability if you're only running like 6.5 hours a day. But the cheapest way to increase your shop's capacity isn't always buying additional machines. If you're only running one shift, run a second shift or invest in some kind of automation so that you can get more hours out of those existing spindles that you have in your shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So terrible is normal. I mean, if you think about it, like, world class is world class. Terrible is normal. I could play backyard football with you and think I played awesome, and then I could go into an NFL game and they would be like spatula-ing me off the turf. You know, well, in one I'm thinking I'm pretty good, and in one I'm the worst player on the field by far. So it's about gaps. The gap between a normal OEE like 21% and world-class OEE like 75%, like, that's where all the treasures are found, is in that gap, and just iterating towards improving that gap. So that's exactly what this episode's about. Like, how do we coach toward that? So how would you coach toward improving your availability? Like, your machine is actually running when it was planned to be running. There's a million different reasons for like poor availability, but a couple that come to mind.
Like investing heavily in your operating process so that everything that you need to run that job is available to the operator. And shops run different, right? So sometimes you've got like dedicated programmers that are different from the setup personnel, which are different from the operators. Some shops empower basically a machinist to be all of those things and run the whole process. But whoever it is, make sure that they have the tools and the information they need to be successful. And that means possibly making investments in ERP and MES solutions so that, you know, that flow of information. And that's what we're really talking about. It's the flow of information is getting to the right people at the right time so that no one's confused about what the objective is on that specific job. I think that's a great way to improve that. Obviously, when we're talking about like mechanical failures, let's say on the machine tool, you know, you've got all these different downtime reasons. We already talked about tool performance and how to address that. The other thing is just like being on top of your shop maintenance, right? I mean, coolant disappears out of the coolant tank over time by evaporation. That happens to everybody. And that'll often throw an alarm on the machine and send the machine down. Now, if that happens, let's say you're running 18 hours a day, not 24, that's still pretty good. Let's say that happens 20 minutes after everyone leaves the shop for the day and there's no way to refill that coolant tank. You've just lost all kinds of machine time off of a very simple fix. Right. So
that's why you're confined to that 8-hour window. You got
right.
20 minutes, 8 hours of 20 minutes.
So, I mean, there's
you didn't get the 16 hours that is the swing shift and the graveyard shift.
There's great, systems that refill your coolant tank. Maybe not everyone's going to make that investment, but maybe, I don't know, like little predictive alerts to your shop maintenance personnel saying, hey, coolant tank, maybe you set a threshold, like anything below 70% full, they get an alert to go top it up just so that you're good to go. All those little things. And the reality is there's probably like 100 little things like that in the process that you need to just have a solution for.
So how do you know which of those it is? It's actually capturing the downtime reasons.
That's right. And start with the low-hanging fruit, right?
You don't even need all these sensors to do base level machine monitoring and start to select the reasons that it's down. I mean, we can help, of course. We can help with auto-correcting coolant conditions and really reporting on every single aspect of the machine that could shut it down for those that are real high level or aspiring to be real high level. But base level machine monitoring, hey, why was it 6.5 instead of 8? Well, the setups were killing me today. I had to fix this aspect of the machine before I could run it. So some sort of maintenance issue, just capturing the reasons. And then when you do your daily stand-ups, when you have your lean cadence, talking about those reasons and predicting them and getting ahead of them and preventing them from happening tomorrow. And that 6.5 goes to 8. And then you start getting more of those extra hours when nobody's there because you're just solving one problem at a time and you're improving your overall availability.
And I mean, there's always a legit reason. It's hard to capture those reasons because even if maybe that happens in the afternoon, maybe that operator forgets all about it by the next morning meeting and it just doesn't come up. And now that's not captured. So I think in a perfect world, you have some kind of mechanism in place where you can communicate why it took longer than expected, create the culture, of course, where that's not a reason to penalize you as a team member because it took longer, but empower that person to be like, hey, it was supposed to take 6 minutes per cycle. It took 9.5. Here's why. And that's great. And find ways to gamify that so that your team, is excited to kind of share that feedback.
You should be rewarded for bringing up problems.
Oh, 100%.
It should be the opposite of CYA, cover your ass, another acronym. It should be more like, no, here's where I missed the mark. And here's what we can do about it as a team. I could use some help from my leadership by equipping me with these tools or whatever, or this one's just on me. I won't do it again tomorrow. Those are the employees you want who are all you said the word culture. That's a huge part of this on both availability and performance,
Well, and to tie this together, you had had a separate definition for OEE that is different than the one that everyone knows about. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as part of the Automated Shop Conference, I started thinking okay, let's say you're calculating OEE. You've got this integrated MES and ERP and machine monitoring solution, and you're going full circle, and you've got OEE. You figured out how to capture that. That tells you, are your machines operating the way they're supposed to? Okay, but what really drives a business? Machines and people. They have to be working together. So how are you measuring if your people are operating at peak performance? And so if your people are working to potential, their full potential, it's still availability, performance, and quality under this lens that you can think about it. Availability, are they dependable? Do they show up and work the hours they're supposed to work? People aren't machines, but we schedule machines. They don't often hit the targets. We schedule people. Sometimes they're calling in sick too much or no call, no show or whatever the reason is. So just basically availability is the best ability. Are they dependable and are they working when they should be? That's something you can easily track. And everybody's already tracking it because people clock in and clock on, you pay them. So, and then performance. Now, in this case, it's about what you're doing beyond operating the machine. So are they creative? Are they part of the continuous improvement plan? And then quality, are the creative ideas for continuous improvement actually improving the business. So this is my overall employee engagement metric. The other OEE, hours worked divided by scheduled hours, hours spent on continuous improvement divided by the total hours worked, and then continuous improvement ideas generated divided by, or implemented divided by continuous improvement ideas generated. So like, good example, you've got your machine set up so you're not standing there opening and closing a door because you're doing all the things we talk about on lights out. So now you've got maybe 2-3 hours of cycle, maybe more, where you've got your mind that God gave you that you could think of creative, amazing ways to improve your company. What are you doing with those 2 to 3 hours? Are you just sitting there like catching something on Netflix real quick while you're waiting for the cycle to end and wasting that time? Or are you 5S'ing your shop and logging that time? Hey, I 5S'd my work area, or I've spent some time doing on-the-job training. I want to become a great programmer. I'm already a great machinist, so I spent the time learning the new programming software that we're using, the new CAD/CAM software. Or I did some research on our supply chain and found a way to find a better material supplier. It could be anything. Whatever the problem is, are you working on something beyond just staring at the window of your machine, watching coolant spray all over the place?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's what I love about, I got to give a shout out to Paul, our good buddy Paul, but like ProShop has a module where you can actually log how much time you're spending on continuous improvement versus how much time each operator is spending on the job. So that allows you to get this performance measurement as part of the overall employee engagement, or the other OEE. And then quality
That's
is like,
amazing.
look, like we've come up with all these ideas. And so companies should have standards, especially companies that are operating with automation. You need process reliability and standards. So how do you take the time that you've come up with all these creative ideas, and how do you make sure that those ideas are raising the standards and getting implemented into the business and becoming, the next way that you do it, closing a gap? So
Mm-hmm.
look, it's kind of a made up metric. I think it's awesome. If I owned a machine shop, I would probably try to implement it. The point isn't like implement this metric. The point is like make sure the OEEs are connected. Your overall equipment effectiveness and your overall employee engagement will improve each other.
Right.
That's the whole point of it. So.
Well, and like machine monitoring without this coaching culture is really just a scorekeeper in a sense. And to kind of tie this back to your coaching analogy, you're not going to win the games by staring at the scorecard, right? You're going to win the games by coaching the team play by play. And then you're going to watch the scorecard improve over time. And so that's like, that's a big thing. I think OEE can be like, in some ways, a bit of a vanity metric, right? It's like everyone's at a conference, all these shop owners, like, well, what's your OEE? Oh, mine's, 40%. Oh, well, mine's 45. So I must be way better than you. It's like, no, it's not a vanity metric. It's a coaching tool, right? It's something that you can use to lead your team and lead your shop towards this better outcome, right? And really, you got to ask yourself, how are your shop floor team members going to react in a shop that's strictly monitored versus a shop that is coached? And how is that going to improve morale and trust and team performance? And I think those are really good questions that shops should be asking themselves. I don't have any data to back this up. I suspect there's a lot of shops out there that are currently monitored right now, but not coached. And I think that's the missing link. And
we're in the journey of like, I would say we're still in some areas of our business mostly monitored and just starting to implement the coaching. That's what leadership is investing in creating those problem solvers beneath you as the business owner. So you're not the one coaching everybody, but you've built a team of problem solvers. Because inside availability, performance, and quality is 100 factors. And each of those has their own metrics. And like when you started getting into coolant condition sensors and things like that, like that could be part of the availability problem that you get to when you've solved so many other problems. And you're like, how do we make sure coolant is never the problem? Like people aren't going to start their shop and go to that like high end full condition monitoring where they're sensing every aspect of their machine. They get there because they're already kicking so much ass that that's the next way to improve the gap.
That's right.
It's really cool. Can I end on a positive example using football?
I'd love
Chicago
that.
Bears.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Your
there's
favorite team.
there's 3 phases to football, right? You've got offense, defense, and special teams. It's kind of like your availability, your performance, and your quality. And it's I want to draw a parallel to what you said about like everybody's contributing to the improvement. So the Bears won a last minute victory, which never happens. They always lose in the last minute. They always find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And the reason they won is because they blocked a field goal. And the reason they blocked a field goal is because the long snapper on the Bears, the guy who hikes the ball to the kicker, noticed when they were watching film that the long snapper of the Raiders, the team they were playing, moves the ball slightly before he snaps it. So he's got to tell. So they knew this, and the guy whose job is to like run around the side and block the kick was looking for that little tell. So that's the whole point. We connected all the way back to football. So they're watching film. They're looking for what can we find in the data? What can give us an edge? What can give us that next little piece? And that split second move of the ball before he snaps it allowed the Bears guy to get in there and block the kick. Well, okay, I'm a nerd. I love my team. But that's actually a really great example of like, how are we thinking? That didn't come from the head coach. That came from a guy who has a very never talked about position. All you do is hike the ball. You're a long snapper. And it came from him. It came from his insight. So maybe the next groundbreaking idea for your shop comes from somebody or some function that you would never expect. And it's what allows you to close that gap.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, OE is not going to get better in the office. It gets better on the shop floor. It's about empowering team members to make those improvements.
So awesome, man. I thank you for empowering me to share a little bit of what I shared in Indianapolis and talking about coaching versus monitoring. I thought it was an awesome episode, even though we missed Eric because he's bringing home that golden battle axe or whatever it is.
But hopefully Battle Axe Eric will return in the next episode.
Awesome. Let's turn the lights out on this episode. Peace.
All right. See ya.